So exercises 3 and 4 are just a little bit more complicated. You're noticing that we're getting a lot more information, a lot more changes in shape, and they're also deciding to stick to 2 dimensions, which means, again, our height is going to have to go on the front view, and our depth has to go on the top view because the side view doesn't exist. Okay, only draw as many views as you actually need to communicate the information. Having an extra view that's unnecessary, then that doesn't add to it. In fact, it just confuses things. So what we're going to be doing on exercise 3 is learning about 2 different methods of dimensioning. The first method is called datum, or reference point. And this is the kind I tend to use the most because for me, it makes the most sense. When you are doing CAD or CAD lathe, CAD CNC mill, anything like that, they always start from a reference point of 0, 0, 0. Okay? 0 height, 0 width, 0 depth. And they all start, every single dimension refers back to that one reference point. So that is why I tend to stack all of my dimensions from one starting point and working my way out. It's the most useful in the manufacturing world at this point. So the first kind I'm going to teach you, I'm going to use height. We're going to be doing datum, which is the reference point. Okay, with datum dimensioning, you would have a symbol down here that is inferring that every single measurement will come from that starting point. Okay, I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 elevations, which means I need 3 total dimensions. Okay, so I'm going to start all of my dimensions from that bottom line. Two and 3. Okay, and you want the lines to extend out, or at least your outermost lines to extend out about the same distance. So the first dimension, the smallest one goes the closest. Height. This one is also a height dimension. As is this one. Okay. So that is an example of datum dimensioning. All of them start from the same, and notice, they just kind of, the larger they get, the further out they get. And also I want to point out, you try to put your dimension, your actual physical dimension, closest to the center of the 2 arrows as you can. I'm not going to ask you to measure everything out, but try to center it unless they all end up in a straight line, and that reduces readability. So make sure they're slightly staggered, but the whole point is to make it easy to read. The other method is called chain. Okay, and again, you need to have your total width, which I can either put here on the top view or on the front view. But think of the way that a chain links together. Okay, you have the first one that links up to the second one. Okay, so these here we go. Here's one, and there's the next. And you're going to be tempted to put in the last link, but we don't put in the last link because we have to have the total. If we have a last link in that, then we've over-constrained it. So we have to have our total width. Okay, leave out last link. Okay, don't do it. So we have all of our height, we have all of our width, and now it's the depth. Now here's the kicker. A lot of us naturally would be tempted to dimension from the back to the front for each of these points. But that's actually unnecessary, because if we know the distance, like the total depth here, okay, if we know where the angle starts and we know where the angle ends, then we don't actually need those other marks to be created, because it works itself out when you're cutting things. Okay, several of you figured that one out while you were working on your desk organizer. Okay, so it's not necessary to dimension the back to front here, the back to front here, not necessary. If we know where the cut angle starts and where it ends, it works itself out. So number 3 is done. Okay. Number 4, I'm just going to add in a few things. I would like you to point out that in my drawings, okay, I keep it what's called in between views. If you think about where you would transfer lines back and forth to create these drawings with your construction lines, those construction lines are what we usually convert into extension lines to put our dimensions on. So 99% of the time, you're going to keep it between the views. Okay. Also common practice when it's just 2 views, we tend to keep it where the views would have been, okay, if you had a right view as well. But sometimes it doesn't make sense to drag an extension line, which you can do. It doesn't make sense to drag an extension line through this object if it's only 2 views. So this height, I'm actually going to put on the left side. Okay, typically we would have it on the right side, but since we're going for readability and neatness, I will put it over here. But because my machinist is used to looking over here for the total height, I will put the total height off to the right side. Oh, that's bothering me. These 2 need to be extended. Okay, I also want to point out that the arrow doesn't go at the very end of the line. Okay, you usually have about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch between the end of the extension line and where the arrow starts. Okay, and that's just a common practice. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go with width information. There's a lot of things happening up here, so I'm just going to make sure that I have my total width very quickly locatable. That's a word today, apparently, according to my lack of coffee. So I'm going to put my total width down here. So that my machinist can quickly find my height, my width. Okay. As for the other bits, I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. So that leaves 3. One of them has to be the total width, which means I'm going to need 2 smaller dimensions. You can either chain them or datum them. It's up to you. You're going to figure out what style works best for you. And that is something that once you figure out what works best for you, you are going to be able to dimension things a lot more accurately and a lot quicker than you would have in the past. So as you continue on, this will get easier. Okay. And then finally, let's see, I have 1, 2, 3 width dimensions. That one's all done. The final one is depth. Okay, all of that is going to have to be on the top view. And remember, it is okay to cross extension lines. You just can't cross the dimension lines. So I'm going to put my total depth the furthest out. Okay. And then let's see here, 1, 2, 3 levels. So I need 2 dimensions. 1 is my total, So I need one more depth dimension. I can either go from here to here or from here to here. Okay, either one is correct. So I'm going to put it, oh, early. What did you just do? Okay, I'll go back and fix that. You have to have the gap. So that was me messing up, and since I'm using pen like a goof, I can't erase it. Okay, so I have my depth. The last thing I want to point out with this is that it would have been easy for me to put my width from here to here, just like in this space, but you have to stay out of the glass box. Okay, don't draw inside of the glass box that you would draw your actual shape inside. Okay, that's why we have extension lines. We extend it away, but in a way that makes sense. That way we don't have lines on top of lines and trying to figure out, is that an object line? Is that an extension line? Drawing inside of that glass box only creates confusion. So you have to extend your lines out, hence the term extension line, to help stack those dimensions in a way that can easily be read, and yet you can still see the intended shape of the object. So continue on with your tutorials to the next page, dimensioning circles.